about Gucci, the brand that gave us luxury handbags, killer scandals, blackface sweaters, family murders, tax evasion, and more lawsuits than a courtroom drama. For every red carpet triumph, there's a behind-the-scenes disaster stitched into its legacy. From sweatshops in Tuscany to cursed family drama, Gucci proves luxury isn't always glamorous. It's often ridiculous. Sorry to interrupt, but if you're still not subscribed, even Gucci's mannequins are judging you. They subscribed twice. Made in Italy, kind of. Gucci's favorite flex is made in Italy. Like those 3 words automatically guarantee Michelangelo himself hand-stitched your purse. Reality check. In 2014, Italian authorities raided Gucci subcontractor workshops in Tuscany and uncovered sweatshop conditions that would make even Shine blush. Immigrant workers were being paid 2 to 3 euros an hour, barely enough to buy a Gucci shoelace, while pulling 14-hour shifts. Some were even sleeping in the factories to keep up with deadlines. So much for artisanal craftsmanship. It turns out your $3,000 handbag was made in conditions that sound more like a Dickens novel than luxury fashion. Gucci loves to sell the fantasy of old-world artisans carefully shaping leather with centuries of expertise. In reality, it was more like, hope you don't pass out from exhaustion while stitching that logo. And when the scandal broke, Gucci acted shocked, as if they weren't aware that you don't get billion-dollar profit margins from paying people living wages. Their heritage myth collapsed faster than a knockoff zipper, and suddenly, made in Italy didn't sound quite so classy. Turns out it's less a stamp of pride and more a marketing gimmick hiding the ugly truth. Gucci's luxury fantasy was stitched together with exploitation. Fashion meets fascism. Back in the 1930s and 40s, Gucci wasn't exactly draping himself in moral courage. Nope, he was busy making sure Gucci aligned itself with Italy's fascist regime. While average Italians were rationing bread and dodging air raids, Gucci was slurping up scarce resources to churn out leather handbags for the elite. Nothing like using wartime embargoes as an excuse to flex your exclusivity. It's almost impressive. You've got a dictatorship, economic collapse, and global war, yet Gucci still found time to prioritize overpriced luggage over, human decency. Forget made in Italy. This was more like made in Mussolini's gift shop. When other fashion houses were at least pretending to keep their noses clean, Gucci leaned in with both loafers. It set the tone early. Profit first, morality somewhere buried under the floorboards of the Milan office. And decades later, Gucci still has the audacity to claim it's all about freedom of expression. Sure, if by freedom you mean buttering up a fascist so you can sell handbags to generals. Clap it up for heritage branding, folks. Murder she paid. In 1995, Maurizio Gucci, the last heir with an actual bloodline connection to the company, was shot dead outside his Milan office. And who ordered the hit? His ex-wife, Patrizia Reggiani. That's right, Gucci gave us a murder plot that reads like a soap opera on steroids. Patrizia didn't just want alimony, she wanted Maurizio 6 feet under. She actually hired a psychic and a few low-budget hitmen, because apparently even luxury families cut corners when it comes to contract killing. The media had a field day dubbing Patrizia the Black Widow, and she lived up to the role with fur coats and dramatic sunglasses during her trial. If Shakespeare were alive, he'd drop his quill in jealousy. And yet, Gucci the brand barely missed a beat. They turned scandal into marketing gold decades later with Lady Gaga and Adam Driver. Maurizio might have lost his life, but Gucci gained a box office hit. Murder as PR? Now that's brand consistency. Somewhere in the afterlife, Maurizio's thinking, at least the royalties looked good. Tax evasion? When you think of luxury fashion, you probably think of silk scarves, leather loafers, and felony tax fraud? Aldo Gucci, co-founder and patriarch, decided paying Uncle Sam was just a poor person's hobby. In 1986, at the ripe age of 81, Aldo got nailed for evading about $7 million in US taxes. $7 million. And the kicker? It wasn't some IRS super detective who caught him. Nope, it was his own son, Paolo, who ratted him out in the most Gucci family tradition ever. Betrayal, lawsuits, and maximum drama. Aldo ended up serving a year in a Florida prison, probably the only inmate rocking Italian loafers in the cafeteria. Imagine being so committed to luxury branding that you can't even commit your crimes modestly. Aldo basically pioneered tax evasion chic. Forget minimalism. This was maximalist fraud at its finest. And when the patriarch of your billion-dollar brand is shuffling off to jail at 81 years old, you'd think the family would take a hint about ethics. Spoiler, they didn't. Gucci survived, the handbags kept selling, and Aldo's prison stint became just another fun fact in the company's origin story. Who needs morality when you've got monograms? Sweatergate 2019. You know your design team is out of touch when they reinvent blackface as knitwear. In 2019, Gucci blessed us with the $890 balaclava sweater, a black turtleneck with a mouth cutout outlined in giant, bright red lips. Because nothing says edgy couture like looking like a minstrel caricature. And they released it in February. Yes, Black History Month. You couldn't script a worse timeline if you tried. Social media blew up, celebrities dragged them, and Gucci scrambled to apologize with the usual "we didn't realize" corporate nonsense. You didn't realize? Did no one in that giant boardroom full of highly paid creative geniuses think, maybe we shouldn't slap cartoon lips on black fabric? Honestly, a blindfolded toddler with crayons could have seen the problem. But nope, Gucci went full speed ahead until the backlash forced them to pull it. And here's the kicker. The sweater still sells on resale sites as a collectible. Imagine flexing your racism couture on eBay for double the price. Bravo, Gucci. You managed to prove that with enough money, even offensiveness gets a luxury markup. Turban trouble. Only Gucci could take a sacred religious symbol and try to slap a $790 price tag on it. Enter the Indie Full Turban, which debuted in 2019 on Nordstrom's site. To Gucci, it was just another accessory like a belt or handbag. To millions of Sikhs worldwide, it was cultural appropriation at its most insulting. The turban, or dastar, isn't a fashion statement. It's a core part of Sikh identity and spirituality. But hey, when you're Gucci, apparently everything's fair game for a cash grab. Social media erupted, Sikh groups protested, and Nordstrom quietly pulled it off the shelves after realizing maybe exploiting religious headwear wasn't the branding win they thought it was. But Gucci? They gave their usual shrug and apologize routine, pretending the $800 turban was just a harmless experiment in style. Right? Because when I think luxury fashion, I think sacred headdress stripped of meaning. Honestly, what's next? $2,000 communion wafers with the double G logo? At this point, Gucci isn't innovating. They're just raiding world cultures like it's a costume party. Nothing screams exclusivity like selling someone's sacred tradition back to them with a receipt. Dapper Dan disaster. Picture this, Harlem legend. Dapper Dan spends the 1980s making jaw-dropping streetwear by remixing luxury logos, including Gucci's, into bold cultural statements. Gucci hated it. They sent lawyers, not love letters, and basically ran him underground for daring to use their double G's in a way that didn't involve charging a month's rent for a belt. Fast forward to 2017, and suddenly Gucci's design team decided to get inspired by Dan's work. By inspired, I mean they photocopied one of his jackets and slapped it on their runway like it was a brand new idea. No credit, no acknowledgement. Just billion-dollar plagiarism dressed up as heritage. The internet wasn't having it. Social media dragged Gucci so hard it almost scuffed their loafers. Critics pointed out the hypocrisy. Back in the day, Gucci labeled Dapper Dan a counterfeiter, but here they were counterfeiting him. To save face, Gucci scrambled to turn this theft into a redemption arc, eventually partnering with Dan for an official collaboration. Translation: sorry we stole your homework, wanna co-sign it so we don't get expelled? The whole fiasco exposed just how clueless Gucci can be about the cultures it borrows from, and how quick they are to jump on trends they once tried to destroy. Luxury fashion or luxury plagiarism? At Gucci, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Straitjacket chic. Because nothing screams luxury like mental illness cosplay, Gucci decided that their Spring-Summer 2020 show needed a theme. Psychiatric ward realness. 21 models marched down the runway in white straitjackets and medical uniforms, with Gucci claiming it was a statement about societal constraints. Translation: we ran out of creativity and raided a hospital supply closet. The backlash was immediate, and rightfully so. Mental health advocates called the designs a cruel trivialization of real suffering, and audiences weren't exactly rushing to drop $5,000 on luxury restraint wear. The real MVP of the show, model Aisha Tan-Jones, who silently protested on the runway by raising their hands with "mental health is not fashion" scrawled across their palms. It was a powerful mic drop moment that highlighted just how out of touch Gucci's idea really was. And of course, Gucci backpedaled with their usual corporate apology word salad. "We didn't mean to offend, we wanted to spark conversation." Funny how those conversations always involve dragging your brand on Twitter. At this point, it's practically Gucci's marketing strategy. First blackface sweaters, now straitjackets. Apparently no topic is too sacred to turn into runway kitsch. Gucci claims to be about pushing boundaries, but what they really push is patience. Honestly, who's buying this stuff? It's like their speedrunning controversy just to stay relevant. Python purse problems. Luxury fashion loves a good sustainability buzzword, and Gucci was no exception, parading around with glossy marketing about ethical sourcing and responsibility. Too bad reality looked more like a horror film. In 2024, a U.S. class action lawsuit accused Gucci of deceiving customers by selling exotic skin products, python, crocodile, lizard, while labeling them as cruelty-free. Enter PETA and undercover investigations, which revealed gruesome practices in Thai farms. Pythons clubbed unconscious, strung up, and skinned alive. Crocodiles cramped into concrete pits until it was handbag time. But hey, at least the logos look good. Customers who thought they were buying guilt-free luxury ended up funding what amounted to reptile torture chambers. The irony? Gucci has positioned itself as a leader in sustainability. Their ads are filled with flowers, bees, and big words like responsibility. But apparently the responsibility didn't extend to not bludgeoning snakes to death. The lawsuit called this exactly what it was: deceptive marketing to pad profits. And let's be real. Who wakes up in the morning thinking, what I need to complete my outfit is the mutilated remains of a python? This scandal peeled back the pretty packaging and showed the ugly truth. Gucci's ethical image was just another accessory stitched together with blood. Snake chic suddenly didn't look so fashionable. Paolo goes rogue. Every dysfunctional family has a black sheep. For Gucci, it was Paolo. In 1980, Aldo's son decided he was done being sidelined in family business squabbles and launched his own competing line, boldly named Paolo Gucci. Points for creativity, Paolo. Naturally, the rest of the family lost their designer belts over it. Lawsuits erupted almost immediately, with the clan accusing him of tarnishing the Gucci name, because clearly nothing screams brand damage like tax evasion, forged signatures, and attempted murder. Paolo's venture quickly turned into a public mess. The family dragged him to court, tabloids feasted on the drama, and his rogue brand crashed harder than a counterfeit handbag in the rain. Paolo wasn't exactly a business genius either. His line flopped, his credibility evaporated, and he ended up disowned and disgraced. But the real entertainment value came from the sheer pettiness on display. The Gucci family didn't just fight. They waged generational warfare with lawsuits, betrayals, and PR nightmares. Paolo's solo stunt just added another layer of dysfunction to an already chaotic legacy. In the end, he became less a fashion innovator and more a cautionary tale. Cross the Gucci empire and you'll wind up with your name on clearance racks, and a permanent place in Family Feud history. Forgery, but make it fashion. When you think luxury, you think silk scarves, Italian leather, maybe a touch of elegance. What you probably don't think of is forging your dead dad's signature. But that's exactly the trick Maurizio Gucci pulled in the 1980s to snatch control of the company. Allegedly, Maurizio and some executive buddies whipped up fake share certificates, complete with a forged Rodolfo Gucci signature, to make it look like he had legal authority to take over. And it worked, at least for a while. Maurizio seized power, sparking lawsuits and corporate chaos that made Wall Street look like amateur hour. The scandal painted Gucci less like a luxury empire and more like a mob-run side hustle with better tailoring. Of course, the family was already notorious for infighting, but this stunt elevated things to Shakespearean fraud. You could practically hear the ghost of Rodolfo yelling from beyond the grave. "That's not my handwriting, you idiot!" Legal battles dragged on, tabloids had a field day, and the Gucci brand image took yet another hit. Still, Maurizio held control long enough to tank the company's finances and pave the way for outsiders to swoop in. So the real legacy here? The House of Gucci wasn't built on heritage. It was built on forged paperwork and family treachery. Nothing says timeless luxury like corporate fraud in cursive. Inheritance? Only for the boys. Imagine working for your dad's company, helping build it into a luxury empire, only to find out your reward is absolutely nothing, because you were born with the wrong chromosomes. That's what happened to Grimalda Gucci in 1953 when her father, the oh-so-progressive Guccio Gucci, died and explicitly cut her out of ownership shares. Why? Because apparently handbags are for women, but profits are strictly for the boys' club. Forget talent, loyalty, or competence. Guccio's will basically said, "Nice try, Grimalda, but patriarchy's the real heir here." Even though she worked in the family business, she was erased from its legacy like a bad accessory from last season's line. It's almost poetic. The brand that markets empowerment to women was literally built on excluding women from power. Fast forward decades, and Gucci sells feminism-inspired t-shirts for hundreds of dollars. Ironic when their own foundation story reads like an HR training video on gender discrimination. Spoiler alert, you can't slap girl boss on a hoodie when your company's origin story is basically Mad Men, the Italian cut. But hey, nothing screams luxury heritage like sidelining your daughter, while the sons run the company straight into years of lawsuits, betrayals, and one actual mafia-style assassination. Bravo, Guccio! Your legacy is as elegant as a leather belt. And about as flexible. First Class Fantasyland with Kendall Jenner. When your brand is already known for being tone deaf, why not double down by dropping a commercial that makes people rage scroll on TikTok? Enter Kendall Jenner's 2024 Gucci campaign. The supermodel strutting through a near-empty luxury airport with personalized KJ luggage. Now, for anyone who's been herded like cattle through TSA, sweating bullets as you take your shoes off and argue with a bored agent about why your water bottle isn't a weapon, this ad felt like a slap in the face. Kendall's struggles included finding her gate. What a tragedy. Meanwhile, the rest of us are praying our carry-on fits in the overhead bin without being publicly shamed by a flight attendant. The whole video looked like it was filmed in an alternate universe where delays don't exist. Middle seats aren't a thing, and luggage isn't lost in Dallas forever. Critics called it unreal, which is the polite way of saying, did you guys actually talk to a single human who flies economy? At a time when most travelers are dealing with skyrocketing airfare and airport chaos, Gucci thought it'd be genius to showcase the exact opposite. Honestly, nothing says luxury like being completely oblivious to the lives of 99% of your customers. And if you thought Kendall's infamous Pepsi protest ad was bad, just wait. This was the sequel nobody ordered. Demna drama at Gucci. Because when you're trying to fix your brand's image, the smartest thing to do is hire a guy who comes with his own scandal attached. In 2025, Gucci appointed Balenciaga's Demna Gvasalia as creative director, a man tied to Balenciaga's 2022 child bondage ad fiasco, which made global headlines for all the wrong reasons. Gucci basically looked at a PR dumpster fire and said, "Yes, we'll take 2 of those, please." The backlash was immediate, with Gen Z lighting up social media like it was Fashion Week in hell. Memes, boycotts, and hashtag Gucci canceled trended faster than Demna could say edgy. Investors weren't laughing either. Kering stock dropped 13% after the announcement. That's not just bad press. That's billions evaporating because someone thought controversy was a good look. Hiring Demna was like handing your brand's reputation a lit match and a can of gasoline. Sure, he's got talent, but talent doesn't erase the fact that his last employer had to apologize for, accidentally sexualizing children in an ad campaign. Bold move, Gucci. Real bold. The timing couldn't have been worse either. Luxury sales were already sliding, and instead of stabilizing the ship, Gucci chose to strap fireworks to it and see what happens. Turns out, what happens is people question whether your brand even knows what ethics means anymore. Spoiler, they don't. The quiet luxury flop. Gucci tried going from rainbow maximalist fever dream to beige oatmeal chic in 2024 under creative director Sabato De Sarno, and spoiler alert, it bombed harder than Crocs at the Met Gala. De Sarno thought quiet luxury was the next big thing, pivoting away from Alessandro Michel's wild, flamboyant designs that had turned Gucci into a pop culture juggernaut. Instead, what we got was a runway full of clothes that looked like they came from the sad beige toddler section of Instagram. Critics called it uninspired, customers yawned, and sales nosedived a whopping 25%. Nothing says fashion revolution like tanking a quarter of your revenue in one season. Kering executives were probably popping champagne when Michelle left, only to find themselves drowning in silence when nobody wanted to buy $3,000 outfits that looked like something from Zara's clearance rack. Even fashion influencers, the kind who would normally sell you a paper bag if it had a logo, couldn't spin this one. Gucci's whole experiment proved that just because you can rebrand doesn't mean you should. Sabato was ousted almost as quickly as he arrived, making his tenure less creative era and more limited time embarrassment. Turns out, quiet luxury was so quiet, it whispered Gucci straight into irrelevance. Losing their own logo. Imagine being such a powerful luxury brand, known worldwide for your interlocking GG logo, only to lose the rights to it in the UK in 2013. Yes, really. After years of slapping that double G on everything from handbags to sneakers to dog collars, Gucci found itself stripped of trademark protection in certain categories when a British court ruled they couldn't monopolize the use of two letters. Translation, you can't just claim the alphabet. The case stemmed from a dispute with Guess, who argued Gucci was abusing trademark law to block competition. The court sided with Guess on several points, leaving Gucci's iconic GG weaker than an outlet mall knockoff. For a brand obsessed with controlling its image, this was a humiliating loss. Suddenly, Gucci's sacred monogram was vulnerable to copycats. It's like Superman discovering his logo isn't copyrighted, and anyone can slap it on a t-shirt at Walmart. For customers, it meant you might be rocking legit Gucci while your neighbor sported something inspired for $20. And legally, Gucci couldn't do much about it. Losing control of your most recognizable symbol is about as embarrassing as Chanel getting beat by Axe body spray. Lesson learned. Maybe don't bet your empire on two letters you didn't invent. Counterfeit crackdowns and the fake Gucci empire. Gucci has waged a relentless war against counterfeiters, but their aggressive tactics have sometimes backfired spectacularly. In the 2000s, Gucci's parent company Kering launched multi-million-dollar lawsuits against small businesses and even individual sellers on platforms like eBay for selling knockoffs. One notable case in 2008 saw Gucci sue a New York woman running a small online store, demanding $12 million in damages for selling fake bags. The public backlash was fierce. People saw it as a luxury giant bullying the little guy while ignoring the bigger issue, their own inflated prices driving demand for fakes. Meanwhile, Gucci's anti-counterfeit campaigns conveniently glossed over how their own factories in Italy were investigated in 2014 for allegedly supplying materials to shady workshops producing authentic knockoffs. It's a delicious irony. Gucci fights fakes in court while their supply chain leaks like a discount bin. This could add a layer to your video about Gucci's hypocrisy in protecting their brand while failing to clean up their own backyard. Counterfeit clowns. Gucci loves to cry about being copied. Their lawyers swoop in like designer-clad Batman every time a fake bag appears on eBay, suing grandmas and small-time sellers like they're Pablo Escobar of knockoffs. Case in point, 2008, when they demanded $12 million from a New York woman with a tiny online shop. Because nothing screams luxury like crushing middle-class side hustlers while ignoring the actual counterfeit factories churning out Gucci lookalikes by the truckload. And here's the kicker. In 2014, Italian authorities discovered shady workshops supplying Gucci's own production line with materials used in, wait for it, fake Gucci bags. That's right, Gucci's war on counterfeits was basically Gucci versus Gucci. Talk about fighting yourself in the mirror. Instead of admitting their supply chain had more leaks than a Louis Vuitton umbrella, Gucci doubled down on lawsuits. The irony is delicious. Gucci pretends their exclusivity is worth 5 figures, then panics when the public realizes you can snag the same look on Canal Street for $50 and nobody can tell the difference. Maybe instead of playing lawsuit roulette, they should focus on making products that don't look like they fell out of a knockoff stall in the first place. Eco-friendly? Yeah, right. If greenwashing were a sport, Gucci would have Olympic gold. In 2021, they launched Gucci Off the Grid, a supposedly eco-friendly collection with recycled nylon and sustainable practices. Cute marketing, until environmental groups discovered the recycled nylon sometimes came from, you guessed it, virgin plastic. That's like bragging about being vegan while eating steak on weekends. And they're bragged about carbon neutrality. It was mostly smoke and mirrors, relying on carbon offsets instead of real emissions cuts. Translation: they planted a few trees and called it a day while still dumping toxic chemicals into rivers through their leather tanning processes. In 2023, watchdogs reported pollution in Italian waterways linked to Gucci's suppliers, which is definitely not in the glossy press release. But hey, as long as you slap a leafy green logo on the box, people will believe you're saving the planet, right? Gucci's sustainability campaign wasn't about protecting the earth. It was about protecting their bottom line and cashing in on eco-conscious Gen Z shoppers. Meanwhile, their exotic leather lines kept growing, their fast fashion style turnover continued, and their environmental record looked like a landfill. Gucci. Off the grid? More like Gucci off their rocker. NFT? No freaking thanks. In 2022, Gucci decided the future of luxury was cartoon sneakers you couldn't actually wear. They launched NFTs and a Gucci vault in the metaverse, hyping up $12,500 digital kicks and other pixelated nonsense. Customers were promised exclusivity, artistry, and futuristic prestige. What they got was clip art level designs in a market that tanked harder than crypto itself. By 2023, NFT sales had collapsed, and Gucci was left holding the bag. Ironically, a very real one nobody wanted to buy. Collectors mocked the designs as lazy cash grabs, while gamers laughed that you couldn't even use the overpriced sneakers in most virtual platforms. It was the fashion equivalent of buying Monopoly money and bragging it was an investment. Gucci tried to spin it as innovation, but the truth was obvious. They jumped on a hype train without checking if the tracks actually existed. Their desperate attempt to stay youthful and digital backfired spectacularly, making them look like boomers trying to TikTok. The whole debacle showed Gucci's Achilles heel. They'll chase any trend, no matter how embarrassing, if there's money to be made. The only thing more worthless than Gucci NFTs? The dignity they lost launching them. And there you have it! Do you own any Gucci clothes? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.